Everybody. It's James Knull here. And on our Thursday broadcast today, we have a real treat. We've got the Jedi himself, one of the most legendary figures and personalities in the Western Canadian real estate world, Mr. Russell Westcott himself. My gosh, it's been far too long since we've had an opportunity to create some content together. And I think it's been over a year since you shared the Mogul Mastermind stage. So we had to reach back out and invite you back. Russell, great to see you.
Hey, yeah, James, we go way back to when we used to be able to have live events. Like that's,
oh my gosh,
like,
it
that's
feels
way,
like
way
a
back.
lifetime ago.
Like that's so like February 2020.
I know, yeah. It seems so long ago. And before we actually hit the go live button, we were just reminiscing because I've known Russell for well over a decade. I remember, Russ, the first time I saw you was at Rain, and it was before they called Acres. It was when it was Quick Start. And I remember, you were the MC of the event, and you gave the godfather of real estate himself, Don Campbell, you initiated a drum roll, and everybody was just pounding on the table as he came up to the stage. And it's going to come full circle because now you're that guy, and you're more than deserving of a drum roll every time you speak. So, maybe just take us back all the way back to those good old days when you were starting your portfolio and hosting Rain meetings.
Well, interesting to note. It's funny. I actually just shared the story with a group of investors out in Saskatoon this past week. Interesting to note. I have now delivered over 900 public presentations. If we actually count webinars and podcasts and stuff, it's probably over 1,000.
Wow.
And it all started with a meeting that I had with Don Campbell. And yeah. I sat down and I said, Don, over a lunch, and I said, Don, I'm interested in becoming a public presenter. I'd never presented ever in my life. And he just kind of said, are you serious about that? I think he was testing me, right? He says, Russ, are you serious about this? And I said, absolutely. And he says, okay, here's the coaches you need to hire. Here's the books you need to read. Here's the work you need to do. And you need to report back when you've done this. And so I just kept doing it and just putting in the reps and keep putting in the time. And how I started was just, being the MC and just hosting and introducing people to the stage. And I got really good at that. And then that was a great way of just taking the steps into becoming a public presenter. And lo and behold, the more I presented and the more I did the work, more people were attracted to me that were maybe interested in wanting to do deals with me. And that's one of the ways how I built my entire portfolio, was using other people's money. But it all started by just doing some public speaking and some presentations and just doing no different than what we're doing here right now. And we're just, moving our mouth and we're making noise, and we're just, we're attracting people to watch what we're doing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. I mean, I was a huge fan right from day one. And I know, do you remember Simon and Elizabeth Schellenberg? They were two realtors that worked for me some time ago. They're independent agents now, but they to this day talk about how huge of fans they were when they were, going to the Rain events in the early 2010s and just hearing you speak and talk about joint ventures. And, one of the reasons that you've earned the title JV Jedi is, I think strategically placed in the background is a book that you co-authored with the man himself, Don Campbell. I mean, the first book I read was Don's book, 97 Tips About Real Estate Investing. And the second book I ever read about real estate is, I guess you can't see me pointing at it, but I'm pointing at the screen. It's that, oh my gosh, I just jiggled my camera. It's that book right there. So
James, you can't reach out to Vancouver and touch
I know you can see me, but I can't physically reach to the screen. But yeah, I mean, that's such a great book. And the cool thing about it is you wrote it over a decade ago, but it's still topical. So maybe take us back to that experience. I mean, you were just going for a trip down memory lane. It's been such a cool journey to watch our careers go in the same kind of timeline. So tell me about that book. Tell the people who are watching about that book that you co-authored.
Well, here's the thing, James. We're gonna have to have a little Wayne and Garth moment. We're gonna have to go way back time or something, right? So, no, interesting to note how the book came from there. It was just every month I was teaching what I was doing, and I was teaching the process and teaching the system of what I was implementing of building my own portfolio. And I made a commitment of everything I was personally doing, I would share with all the Rain members at the time. And every month, and it took a year and a half to fully flesh out all the things. And then turned into a home study program and audio CDs, and then it got transcribed, and then a ghostwriter was hired, and then she wrote the book. Joy Campbell was the person who wrote the book, and geez, that's when was that? 2007 maybe, 2008, or it was a while ago now. And over the last 2 years, I've been actually just redoing everything from scratch again, and just putting on all brand new strategies, all brand new concepts, all the things that are working currently in the marketplace, all things that like you and Adrian are implementing yourself. Congratulations, James, you guys. And that's a reason we should be calling you the $1 million man now. That's like the minimum threshold of what you guys are going to raise now, by the way.
Oh man, that takes me back to like the 80s when I was a kid watching wrestling. It's like Ted DiBiase, the $1 million man, for you WWF fans out there. You know who you are. Drop a comment.
And congratulations.
If you remember Ted DiBiase.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, thank you for the congratulations. The funny thing is, like, even though it seems like a bigger, more complicated deal because there's 24 doors, corporate structure, raising multiple partners. I mean, in chapters 1, 2, and 3 of that book behind you, it's the same skeleton. It's just slightly different meat on the bones. But the core fundamentals of how to joint venture with somebody, how to create a business partnership with, when you've got different people who are bringing different things to the table, like, that's it. Those fundamentals never really change. And just to keep reminiscing, I remember one of the parts of the presentation that you always did at Quick Start and then Acres that I loved was when you talked about how any good partnership, there's a little bit of give and take, and you always you got up the tennis racket and you ran from one side of the stage to the other. And for all you old school Ray members who are watching this video, like, again, drop a comment if you remember us doing that presentation back in the day. But it was actually here's the thing is I would always, and to this day, I always challenge myself to push boundaries of my own skill set. And not only I don't do it for my own sake. I actually do it from the standpoint of how do I deepen the lesson for the audience? So the point of that whole thing is I would use an exercise. I'd have a tennis racket and I'd have a line down the middle of the tennis match. And I would just go back and forth across the stage of going, ooh, and ah, and then I would get the audience to start going, ooh, and ah, and we were just doing a rally back and forth. And then I would just get everybody, the audience start going, ooh, ah, and then I'd say, stop it. And then I would just make a point of just cutting out the back and forth, give the information you need up front, eliminate all the back and forth. And you will actually, there was a couple contexts I used. One was when you're working with a bank, stop the back and forth, and also with partnerships too at the same time, is give them the required materials they need to make a decision without going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So it's just all it really is, and here, let's see this. So James, what are we talking, 10, 12, 13 years later, you remember that, but you don't remember probably the 5 things of the lessons, but you remember how you felt about that lesson of going back and forth with the tennis racket. Yeah, well, and I remember, part of that presentation is just, and I use this exercise to this day. And, now that my career has gotten a little more sophisticated, I do a lot of different things in the real estate world. So I'm creating partnerships, not just for buying properties, but in the realtor realm as well, where, we create partnerships, but it's the same exact thing. I take that sheet of paper, I draw a line down the middle, and it's like partner 1, partner 2, and we just start populating that out. And then at the very bottom, we start writing out what our perceived exit strategy is. Like that it's such a simple exercise, but it's the way to get started.
Well, you want to know how it came to me? How it really came to me was I was doing a deal with a lawyer, and she sat down and she just said, and I kind of outline what it is. She goes, well, let's just really get clear on this. And she just grabbed a fresh piece of paper, no different than like I have my book. And she drew a line across the top, line down the middle, and said, you and me. And then we wrote on each side of the piece of paper, who's doing what and who's doing what. Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I go, this is my joint venture partner doing this to me. And I go, what a fantastic exercise. And it just got really crystal clear about who's doing what. And that's part of something that I share. And it was born out of, that's what I did to actually do a deal. And then I shared that, and I would teach that to people as well. It's a little bit different now, electronically a little bit more, but it's the premise is still the same. And I tell people, if you ever have anything that is unclear, pull out a piece of paper and an old-fashioned pen and just write on one side what you're doing, what I'm doing. And then at the end of it, you can have a conversation about fairness, about who's doing more, who's doing less. And then you can have that conversation about what splits do you do? on that as
Yeah.
well. You just need to have that clarity.
Yeah, exactly. No, I love it.
And it's just a tool that is just because it's used, right? And it just so happened it may sound simple, but it actually works, right? And I'm from Saskatchewan, and we believe in making things simple.
Of course.
Yeah.
I won't even take the easy Saskatchewan joke there. Now, I remember.
Don't worry,
uh,
we've heard them all. We make them all. We tell them all about ourselves, right?
well, hey, if you can't laugh at yourself, what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you did such an exceptional job when you were one of the key speakers and working with Rain. And I remember the day that you retired, and I was at that Rain meeting, and I thought, this is just awesome. You're shifting your career to the next level and focusing on the piece of the business that you're really passionate about, which is educating about joint ventures. I mean, that's your area of expertise. Yeah. And one of the things that we were talking about before we initiated our call here that everybody's tuning into is, it's very easy for those of you watching at home to say, well, I mean, it's so easy for Russell to do a joint venture because he's got this huge public profile and he's the JV Jedi, and who wouldn't want to do a JV with the JV Jedi? And it's so easy for James to do joint ventures because he's the real estate mogul and he has a bazillion clients and everybody talks to him and so on and so forth. But it's important to remember that this is where we are today. We wound the clock back to 2007 and before, when I was a punk kid in my early 20s begging people to be my joint venture partner. And Russ was just a humble guy from Saskatchewan getting his first UJVs done. And that's where a lot of you are now. So Russ, I don't want to finish the conversation from the vantage point of, how do James Knull and Russell Westcott attract joint venture partners and get started. I want to start the vantage point of somebody who's watching this video thinking okay, I bought 2 properties on my own and I'm tapped out, or, I'm a younger person like I was who didn't even have money to begin with. What are just some ways that people can get started? And by the way, this is going to be Russell's presentation at Mogul Mastermind. So don't give away the whole show, but well,
I was just about to give everybody a tease here. Is that
tease it out. What are we going to talk about on Wednesday next week?
What a perfect segue to make sure everybody comes out next Wednesday night for the Mogul Mastermind is, my title of my presentation is Creating Leads for Investment Partners on an Online World. Amazing. And what we're going to really do is, it's things have changed, right? And what you did 7 years ago, what you even did 7 months ago is completely different. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take some time. I'd love to have an hour, but I won't. But I'm going to pack in as much content as I possibly can on the proper way. Anybody, I think, you can generate a lead, but you might not be doing it the right way. And you might be getting the attention of wrong people at the same time. But we're going to talk about some attention building strategies. We're going to talk about some lead generation. We're also going to start getting right up to the point of being able to qualify people. And we're all going to talk around how do you do it on an online world, and how can you be living in, say, Vancouver or Edmonton, and maybe you're attracting money from around the world. How do you do this in an online world? And I got some really cool stuff that I've not shared with anybody, which I'll share with your group on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible stuff. Especially, I mean, with COVID, we've been existing a lot more online now than ever before. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing about generating leads is you can generate 100 people that are saying, hey, yeah, I'm kind of interested. But if there are 100 people that aren't really the ideal partner for you, having a conversation with 100 people, that's a lot of time. Yep. And it can be very exhausting. So, yep. It's almost better to, we're going to talk about how to generate the right attention from the right people so that you're already off in the right direction.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about how to scale it. But here's the thing that I'm going to even challenge most people to. I'm using a term called lead, or I'm going to show you guys a process of how to treat this like a real business. To me, my database of people, my database of email names, my database of people is as worth as much value, asset value to me as my houses are. And I actually have things that I have to do every single day to do lead generation. And then I would ask the question, I imagine most people watching this probably don't have a CRM database. You probably don't have defined funnels. You don't have lead generation. You don't have free giveaways. You don't have free reports. You don't have all those things. And I'm going to share with you guys how to treat this like a real business, that if you get really good at generating leads, you potentially could be a source for maybe a James Knull who's looking for maybe money partners. And you just go to James, I got a whole bunch of people that are looking for some deals. You mind if we have a conversation about if I recommend you? Right. So it could be a business within the business.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really cool angle as well, because sometimes, you're not necessarily ready to do a deal, or you might not have a deal on the go, but you got somebody that is interested, and being a connector. I mean, that's my business. I connect people with houses. We're connectors, and we make a great living connecting. So that's just another spin on it. And, the thing is, you're speaking my language right now. We're talking the language of sales and marketing. But for someone who just got even intimidated by all that lingo, maybe let's kind of end with a couple of really practical things that, like, let's get even more basic. Let's dial it right back to day one. You're just like, somebody who you know how to do a deal. You've made some money in real estate. You've bought a great property. You know how to analyze properties, and given the opportunity to, you can even talk about why you're so stoked about the houses that you bought, because you bought good houses. Yeah. But now we're speaking a whole other language, and that's the language of sales and marketing. You're using words like leads. You're using words like funnels. You said what does CRM stand for? I know, do you know up there? What are a couple of things someone who's like really just taking those first baby steps into this? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I'm going to leave this for everybody to make sure you guys come out on next Wednesday. I'm going to share a story with somebody who I worked with when, before we started, on their phone, they didn't even have the Facebook app. Okay. And first thing we did was we bought him a tripod, and we set out a little communication strategy. On every Monday, he would shoot a little video, and all he was doing was just sharing and documenting his journey. He made a commitment for doing that. That was two and a half years ago now. He's now raising chunks of money in $400,000 to $500,000 because of some of those things he's doing on a weekly basis. And everybody can do what I'm going to share with you, what this guy was doing, what I just coached him through. And it was just as simple as, I'm not going to give you all the ins and outs, but it was as simple as just documenting the process of you becoming a successful real estate investor.
Yeah. I mean, to get back into this, the lingo for a minute, it's story-based attraction of potential business, and people love stories. And so but a story without a system is just that, it's in your head. You maybe tell it around the water cooler, but if you can create a habit and a system around telling your story, which is exactly what you're talking about, Russ, that's when that snowball starts to accelerate and roll and really gain some momentum. So, well,
it's interesting you mentioned story. Is there's a right way and a wrong way to tell a story. And if I have enough time, and maybe if you have Q&A on Wednesday, I'll give you guys the framework of how to tell a good story. And it's funny, I was just on a presentation, and I said, guys, someone time me. I got 3 minutes. I'm going to tell you a story. Here's the framework, and I'm going to tell it. And I did 2 minutes and 47 seconds.
Unreal.
And there's a certain formula to follow to tell a good story.
Well, we've got an hour set aside for you. That's 45 minutes of presentation and 15 of Q&A. But the thing about our meetings is, when somebody's on a roll and people want to stay and keep listening, we let that roll keep rolling. I mean, we had one of the legends of Canadian real estate, Ralph Case, in a little while ago. And I mean, you couldn't get the audience to stop asking questions, and you couldn't get them to stop talking. So, we'll really be excited to have you come speak. And I know that, for those of you that are just on your way, the journey starting about joint venturing, it's a presentation you got to come check out, because, if you've kind of just gotten things moving along, there's a lot to know. There's a lot of simple little things that, as a beginner, simple things add up to big impacts and big results. And so that's why
it's the simple things executed consistently are the ones that will add up. Right.
Yeah.
And often you know, and I don't make too much of it. I make a joke about this, but somebody will, you know, sometimes the question goes, well, what's your superpower, Russ? And I go, it's kind of boring, but my superpower as a real estate investor is I keep showing up. I'm Mr. Show Up Man. I go, it's not a very, you know, it's not a great superhero. It's, hi, I'm Mr. Show Up Man, right? But you just keep showing up, and you keep showing up powerfully and consistently. You keep providing value. You care to help others on their journey. You put other people's interests potentially ahead of yours. And the more people you help on this journey, the more people that will be attracted to you, and slowly you'll build your own following, and you'll be known when you go to these events, or you'll be on James's Mogul Mastermind thing. When you go there, you'll be that one person in the middle, and you'll be surrounded by 7 or 8 people, and they'll be just asking you questions. Now you've started to transition into somebody that's influencing others. And that is not something that happens like a flip of a switch. It's something that takes some time. It's something that takes an intentional work, but it is something that can be done.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's like that seemingly overnight success, but it takes years and years of showing up and doing the right things consistently.
Yeah, it's putting in the reps.
Oh, it's all about reps.
Yep.
You know what? We're in complete alignment on that philosophy. It's just reps help you get masterful at your craft. So, you know, guys, there's a reason that we call Russ the JB Jedi, and it's because he is the master of this particular part of the real estate business. So come check him out. We're gonna take this conversation and expand it. We're gonna get a little more detailed. We're gonna start diving into the lingo. And by we, I mean Russ. I'm just jumping on your coattails here and saying we, when it's really Russ that's gonna be giving all this great content. So show up, guys. Mogul Mastermind is gonna be awesome. Check out the link. And Russ, thanks for popping in on a Thursday to shoot the breeze on, you know, old school REIN memories and, you know, new school joint venture strategies.
Looking forward to it. And you keep calling me the Jedi. I mean, I should have to say something about this is the mastermind that you are seeking. I'm sorry.
I love it.
See you guys Wednesday night.